Do you know what's worth fighting for when it's not worth dying for? Does it take your breath away and you feel yourself suffocating? Does the pain weigh up the pride and you look for a place to hide? Did someone break your heart inside? You're in ruin.
I always had white hair.
121 guns, lay down your arms, give up the fight. 121 guns, throw up your arms into the sky.
This is a low camera.
When your
Not touch the camera
eyes
actually.
are
The microphone is inside. That's why it's so bad. That's why I was waiting for the
Okay. Right. So this is this top of the line stuff. Far out. Oh, the wide angle. So you can capture a lot of information. Wow. So how much does this rig cost? 3,000. No, not bad at all. I've got my camera upstairs. It cost me 2,000.
And you can't get another try. Something inside this heart has died. You're in ruin.
I believe we met exactly 20 years ago, Roger. I believe in 1998.
Right.
And we were taking the same classes at Mercer County Community College.
Yes, the 3D.
Do you remember what classes?
Yeah, it was the 3D
Modeling.
modeling.
So that was like what studio 3D studio.
Yeah, 3D Studio.
3D
Yes.
Studio. Okay.
And I think we both bought 3D Studio.
Exactly. Yes.
And it wasn't that cheap.
It used
I
to
think
have- it
we
was
paid
$2,000.
about $1,000 each or
It had
something.
a dongle, so you couldn't share.
Had a dongle, yeah.
You couldn't share this program. That's why.
Yep. Yeah, my copy is long gone. The computer that had it on died, and I didn't feel like getting it again.
What other classes we were going?
Did
to?
we take something else?
Computer graphics. I don't know. How come we both came to Mel's classes or Mel's exhibitions? How?
Well, I knew you, and you were taking. I knew you from the 3D Studio class,
Okay.
and you were taking Mel's class.
Right. Okay.
So I'm interested in
art.
art. So I was happy to hear about art. And then I took a history of art class with Mel, and I think I asked
So I took the
Mel.
same class. history of art. Maybe we would have taken it
I
together.
don't think so.
Maybe not. Okay, because I've
Yeah.
taken it too, definitely, and I loved it. I also recorded it all the way. I loved the
Oh, you recorded it?
art history class
Yeah.
with Mel, actually.
Yeah, well, he's very good. He's very engaging.
He's not teaching anymore, though.
Yeah. He said it had to be there and it had to be white. It had to be white.
Yeah,
Otherwise, it doesn't work.
that's right. Mel is great. I intend to go to Mel and ask him for permission to interview him, you know, and
Oh, okay.
have a little speech like with you.
Yeah.
That's what I want to do.
Well, that's good. I know he likes your son.
Definitely, yes. I was hoping my son would become a photographer, and instead because of Mel, my son became a painter.
Oh, okay.
Well, now he's a doctor, but he prefers to paint than photograph.
Yeah.
Actually, so I know that you have a degree from Oxford University.
Yes. Yeah. Software engineering.
So that's what you were doing or most of your life. You were working as a computer software engineer.
Yes. Yeah. So I was a computer software engineer from about 1972, 73 to now.
Who did you work for? What companies?
Well, I worked for a lot of different companies. First company was a German company called Herbst Pharmaceuticals, and they were selling chemicals in Britain, and so they had a computer system to process the sales orders and to keep control of what stock. So there was a report called the Stock Availability Report that was run every day that told them what they had in their warehouse. And they had a couple of warehouses in England. They also had the supply of chemicals came from Germany, so if they sold a large amount of chemicals in, say, England, it sometimes involved they'd have to get an order from Germany to ship some stuff over. So there were little programs that were run to control this kind of thing. So they had the computer controlling the business, the sales, and where the stock needed to be. So they had thresholds where the stock went down below certain thresholds. They would order new chemicals in, so they had them available when people would order stuff. And the company was quite aggressive in keeping up with technology. They got into sort of online stuff with CICS shortly after I left. But they were constantly revamping their processing. They weren't standing still, they were trying to improve. I don't think they exist as a company. I think they were bought up. Or maybe they bought somebody and changed their name. But I believe that they're sort of absorbed in a company that was called Calais Infotech, which is another German company that did copier machines, like Xerox, similar kind of thing to Xerox. So I went from there to a company called Decca Limited, where I was hired as a computer programmer. At Herbst, I was an operator, computer operator, changing disk packs, putting paper up in printers to collect printer, and putting tapes up, taking tapes down, and then putting the paperwork, the printed paper, into the right slot for the job, and then the job went on a trolley, and then people would collect it in the morning. Mm-hmm. So we were running 24 hours a day, 8-hour shifts. So I was on a day's shift, evening and nights, 3 in a row. One week of days, 1 week of evenings, 1 week of nights. It's a bit hard to take. You kind of lose track of where you are most of the time. It's very hard to maintain that, but I did it for a year. And I was young, so I could do that. But it was a bit disorientating. I had to have a very dark curtains so that the light wouldn't keep me up. And then my friends would phone me up during the day after I just got home from night shift. And my friend would phone me up and I'd say, "Damn you, why are you calling me up? And he said, well, Roger, I knew you were home. Fuck you, you bastard. Woke me up. He woke me up in the middle of it. I had about 3 hours sleep. I was really groggy. And it's broad daylight. How can I get back to sleep again? So I had to tell all my friends to stay away, or leave me alone. I had to unfriend my friends. So I left Herxt and I joined a company called Decca Limited. And they were interesting because they had Decca Records. The Rolling Stones were on Decca Records, and Cher was on Decca Records, and a group called the Moody Blues were on Decca Records. The Stones had left Decca Records by the time I got there, but the big group still remaining with them was the Moody Blues, and they actually had a number of programs that were devoted to just doing the management of the Moody Blues. Decca also did its own payroll, so one of the programs I wrote was to do with a payroll thing. I produced a payroll report for, I think it was sort of year-end taxation, but it wasn't a good moment in my career because I had a bug in it when it went into production, and people were not very happy with me for a while because everything that was printed had to be done again. So mea culpa on that one. So in about a year, I did about 12 programs, I think, in COBOL. And I learnt a language called assembler, and then I got transferred into the system programming department because that's what I wanted to do, and they were okay about that. And I was there for about 2.5 years, and then I wanted to change operating systems and learn about a different operating system, so that I needed to leave that job and get another job. And that was a company called Selfridges. And Selfridges owned the big store on Oxford Street. There was a PBS show about Selfridges, Mr. Selfridge it was called. And that's the store that I worked for. We got an employee discount, which actually didn't make that much difference. I bought a shirt for 17 bloody pounds. I mean, what was I thinking? I don't know. But I never pay, I pay about £1 for a shirt. I don't know what I was thinking. But this one that was on sale, I got like a 40% discount, employee discount, and it still cost 17 bucks.
This was still in England?
This was ridiculous. This is in England, yeah. Okay. And then about that time, the computing for Selfridges was going to be shut down in London and moved up to Leicester. So everybody who worked in London was let go, essentially. I was offered a job up there in Leicester, but I turned it down and I just took my severance. And I decided to travel around the world, which took me a couple of 2.5 years to do that.
What did you visit? What countries did you visit?
Well, I started off going to Israel because I knew a girl who lived in Israel. I'd met her, she'd stayed at my house because I was sharing a house with another guy, and she was his girlfriend. Then she went back to Israel, and I think my friend went to France, and he was living in Paris. I kind of decided to travel around the world. First place I went was to go to Israel. So I got some injections for stuff. I got a ticket for El Al. Just flew into Tel Aviv and then took a bus to Jerusalem where my friend lived, and I spent about 8 weeks in Israel, a couple of weeks in Jerusalem, 5 or 6 weeks in a place called Gesher Haziv, which is in the north, near a town called Nahariya. And it's a kibbutz that had a hotel on it. So the hotel was quite popular because there's a nice beach up there. It's a holiday sort of resort up there. They had another thing I worked on was potatoes. We had a crop of potatoes that came in, and that was pretty horrible. That was horrible work.
So you've been working there?
Yes.
Support yourself?
Well, for about 8 weeks, you don't really get much money, but you don't need anything. So you get paid about 8 shekels, which is enough to buy. You could go to the supermarket and buy a 6-pack with the 8 shekels, or you could go to a bar and get 1 drink. So what we ended up doing was neither of those things. Some entrepreneurial spirits set up their own bar where we could buy drinks for about 2 shekels, which was cheaper than going to the pub, but maybe more expensive than buying your own. But they needed a little money for their overhead. And so they ran a little bar, and that was a kind of fun thing to do in the evening. I learnt a little bit of Hebrew there. There was a woman that taught a class in Hebrew, and people who wanted to go could just turn up. And we made a kind of joke, which was we didn't know much Hebrew, so our sentences weren't very complicated. So we had to construct a sentence about what did we have for breakfast. So I don't remember the Hebrew, but we had tomatoes, we had lettuce, and we had eggs. And that was it. What did you have for lunch? Well, we had tomatoes, lettuce, and eggs. And what do you have for dinner? Well, we had tomatoes, lettuce, and eggs. So this seems like a funny joke, right? Every meal is the same. We have the same food every meal. Unlikely, but no, actually it was true. It was the same food at every meal.
Just because you didn't have money, or because you didn't know how to say anything else, only those words?
Well, you could serve whatever you like, but the only words that we knew to describe the food we ate were those 3 or 4 words. We didn't know how to describe the other things. But the food was mostly grown on the kibbutz, so they had the potato thing going. They also had a banana plantation, which was kind of weird. They had a plastic factory, which I worked in one night. And the foulest, worst job I ever had in my life was there. And that was going into this big warehouse thing and separating male turkeys from female turkeys.
Oh, Jesus.
Because the males were going to be shipped off to be executed and turned into turkey meat.
Okay. Right,
well, eventually the female turkeys get an idea of what's going on here. And so do the male turkeys. And the male turkeys run away and hide in amongst the female turkeys, and the female turkeys come and attack you.
Wow.
They peck at you, and all the while the place is flooded, so we're in mud, and the mud stinks of turkey poop. So we're there for about 10 hours separating these turkeys. It was horrible, absolutely horrible. And as I say, a foul experience, foulest job I ever had. And I ended up in the hospital for about a couple of days after that. I developed some kind of cough. some sort of weakness. I kind of got dizzy, and they kept an eye on me for a couple of days. And I didn't have to go back to that job, thank God. And my next job was in the plastics factory, which was feeding a machine with the raw plastic, and the plastic press thing would make these shapes, and you'd have to take them out of the molds and put them into a bin, and then set the thing up for it to repeat that process again, and then press the button and wait, away it went, and made more of these things. And the thing it was making was a rocking chair. It was like it had a wheel on it, and it would rock backwards and forwards, so it was for a baby, but it could also be turned into a chair for sitting to eat at. So it had 3 different purposes. I can't remember what the other one was. So it was an interesting idea, and we made the whole thing there, the components for it. Yeah, I looked at what's happened to Geshaziv recently, and I think it's bigger than when I was there, but there's also, it's not so kibbutz-like anymore. The people own their own homes. It's not so collective. Before it was kind of a collective. The children didn't stay with their parents after they were born necessarily. I mean, they stayed for a while, but they went to, they had school on the, at the kibbutz, and the kids were resident in the school and would go to their parents at weekends or something. But now they've got sort of individual property owners in the kibbutz, and some of these people are not necessarily tied into working in the kibbutz. So the nature of the kibbutz is a little different. I don't know the details. So I went to the Negev. When I was there, Israel had captured the Sinai Peninsula, and so you could go all the way down to Sharm el Sheikh. Well, I can't remember where. I think Sharm el Sheikh is at the bottom of the Sinai, and you could go there. And it's the first time anybody from Israel could go there. So a lot of people were going down there. I didn't go all the way. I went about halfway, and just stayed on the beach for a couple of days. But that was all territory that was formerly Egypt, and is now back in Egypt. Egypt got it back. The only place that remains Israel is a town called Eilat, and that's at the bottom, that's at the top end of some body of water. Name escapes me, so to hell with it. And I went to En Gedi, which is a spring near the Jordan, or maybe near the Red Sea. I went into the Red Sea, very salty, very, very salty. So it's not like water when you go into the ocean. It's sort of sticky, and you can feel it sort of holding you up. So you float in it, but it's not like water. It's not you haven't got as much freedom as you got down by the seaside. It's sort of sticky to move through.
You are not able to drown. I'm sorry. Right?
Yeah, I don't think you could drown
because it's so
it's
salty.
so salty that you float. You are lighter than it.
Right.
So it can always support you. You'd have to work really hard to drown yourself. You'd have to really want to do it. But,
Okay. I don't want to do it.
yeah, and I went to this place called Masada, which was where a Israeli revolt against the Romans took place in about 600 AD.
It's like a mountain.
60 AD, yeah.
They built a ramp.
They built the ramp.
For the whole year, and the Israeli killed themselves.
Yes, all of them killed themselves. All the Israelis killed themselves rather than be taken captive.
This is the place of the final, the end of the world, they say. The biblical place. That's where the battle between good and evil will happen, supposedly.
Yeah.
In the future.
Yeah, I'd have my doubts about that.
Okay.
But it was certainly a significant place to Israelis. That's
So you can visit up there on the top of the mountain.
yes,
I guess, and
yes.
You can still see
You can walk up to it.
They had a source of water, I guess, the spring.
Yes, yeah.
Top, some kind of tunnels inside. I saw the documentary. Very nice place. Okay.
Yeah, that was pretty impressive. And then I went from there to can't quite think. Cyprus. I think I took a ferry from
Israel to Cyprus.
from Israel to Cyprus.
Over Mediterranean. Okay. Cyprus is beautiful.
In the Mediterranean.
It's an independent country. It's not part of Greece, right?
Right, it's independent.
Okay.
In fact, it's got two parts. There's a Greek part and a Turkish part. So there are people called Turkish Cypriots and there's Greek Cypriots. And the island is divided. There was a war about 50 years ago, and the Turkish part separated.
Mm-hmm.
So they've been talking about sort of reunifying it forever. So
what's interesting in Cyprus? On Cyprus?
Well, actually, what the only thing that was interesting was there was an American woman that was interesting.
Got it.
But I didn't get anywhere. But she was interesting anyway.
So there were no ruins of some old civilization?
No, not that I came across. It was. I didn't really go looking that much. We went to the beach a couple of times. So there were some nice beaches that if you had a car, you could get to a really isolated beach where there was nobody there, and a lot of beach. So, you know, if you like being by the sea, and you like being on your own, it's a good place. I remember in the town of Nicosia, some prostitute tried to solicit me, but that didn't work out because I didn't really understand what she was trying to tell me. So she got a bit frustrated. And I thought, well, I don't really need that. If somebody's going to get upset, I'm not going to bother, I think.
Right. You were an Englishman in America. How did that happen?
Yeah, I made a mistake about 35 years ago.
Really? Why did you come here? How did you make this decision?
Well, the real truth is that in England I had trouble getting a girlfriend. I didn't have a girlfriend. And even that isn't true. I did have a girlfriend. So it was very nice. I had a nice girlfriend, but I was very confident at that time. And I thought it would be nice to see what was going on in America. I thought I'd be here for 6 months, maybe a year. I thought I'd be able to go into New York, experience New York, and maybe walk the Appalachian Trail. There was a vague idea of doing that. Yeah, none of that quite worked out. When I joined this company called American Can as a contractor, and I seemed to be doing okay. I was enjoying the work, and America was interesting. And I decided that I'd like to go full-time. So they started processing for a green card on my behalf. But they never really kept me informed of what was going on. So there was me and another guy. We're both going to become permanent employees of American Can. But I stupidly got a bit fed up with my work, and I wanted to go do something else. So this was bad on a couple of fronts. One, I had a very good friend in the person who was in charge of technology that I was interested in, and she had actually given me a position in her group. It was all approved. I could go to her group. I didn't do this. I don't understand what I was thinking. That would have been the ideal thing for me to do at that moment. Instead, I wanted to be a software programmer and develop software, and I was looking to go into software development somewhere. So I had about four interviews at different places, maybe 3 interviews. So I interviewed at a place called SyncSort, Innovation Software, and a company called CGA. And CGA, I got the job. So they developed a software product called Top Secret, which provides data security. And that was a pretty interesting product, and I worked on that. And I was pretty good at it, but I was not a programmer. I could fix bugs. So what I could do was I could fix bugs, and I could install software. So I was a pretty good systems programmer. I could figure out what was necessary to install a program, how to maintain it, and how to configure it to work the way we wanted to do, or how to read up on how to change things the way people had them. So American Can had about eight or nine third-party products that went on top of the MVS operating system. So I would be handling part of that. So I knew how to use something called a SMPE, which stands for Standard Software Modification something or other. Ah, man, I'm dropping. Sorry.
All right. Last time I visited you, I believe 20 years ago, you were living with Beverly in Pennington. What happened to Beverly?
Right. Well, Beverly was working at the state in the appeals court processing. So they have a bunch of attorneys that kind of look at how appeals are going.
Was she a lawyer?
Yes.
She was a lawyer.
Yeah, so Beverly was a lawyer. She got a law degree from Rutgers Camden.
Good.
She did that while living in Princeton, married to a philosophy professor at the university. And he had been her teacher at Kenyon College. So she met him at Kenyon. He was a good philosopher, so Princeton offered him a faculty position straight away. You know, he just came in as faculty. He's not teaching philosophy anymore. He works in finance on Wall Street. So Beverly eventually retired from the state, maybe 10 years ago, and she moved back to Worcester, Massachusetts after a while, because she'd found the house for sale that was owned by her grandparents. And she remembered that house from her childhood and had very good memories of that place. So it was one of the few kind of happy memories she had of her childhood, was going to her grandparents' house, where her grandparents would be, you know, happy to see her. Whereas at home there was a certain amount of bickering between her dad and her mum, and you know but there at the grandparents' house, all the kids were treated with encouragement. So So she had fond memories of this and decided to buy the place. So it's in a nice neighborhood that has been in decline. So the housing stock has sort of been allowed to atrophy a little bit. So she came in and decided to revamp the place. So she has a budget every year. She spends $10,000 to $15,000 on renovating some piece of the puzzle.
Okay.
I lost it.
You are retired now, right? What
Yes.
What do you do the entire day? You belong to some dance class, right? You go to some bridge place. What do you do?
Well, right now I've been studying history.
Oh yeah, you're taking the U.S. history class.
So
right?
I'm taking a U.S. history class
At Mercer.
at Mercer County.
Okay.
2 classes a week, and there's a test about once a month. So far I have 2 tests and I have 2 A's.
Nice.
I have 100% in both tests.
Wow. Great. So you're interested in U.S. history, even you're an Englishman.
Yes.
Are you coming back to London, to England? Is this,
I don't know, but I will be going. I will be visiting England in June.
okay, but not coming back for ever. To leave America and to go there to live.
Well,
rest of
it's a
your life.
possibility, but probably not for the next 10 years. I see myself living here for another 10 years.
Okay, you go to some dance classes or courses. This is like school, or what is this?
No, not. I was doing dance at Mercer County, but I dropped out. I couldn't handle it.
You dance in some country club or something.
Well, I do Morris dancing and Molly dancing.
What is that?
But since they're both English sort of ritual dances, where it's not a social dance where you turn up and anybody can join in.
Mm-hmm. So you learn the steps.
We dance dances to be watched, to be performed and watched by people. The general public will watch, and hopefully tip us some money.
Do you have the performances scheduled somewhere so I can come and record you?
Yes, May 1st at dawn at the Mercer Oak.
Okay, May 1st. What day is that? Do you know? You don't know.
What?
Saturday, Sunday. What day of the week?
Well, May 1st, I don't know. Whatever May 1st is. It's always May 1st.
Okay. Last week you went to audition.
Yes.
What was that about? You tried to get into film or acting?
Well, they said it was for advertising, and there was some script to read, some advertising copy to read, and then they wanted to see how you walked on the runway. Mm-hmm. Now I got into the little piece that I had to do, and I got a round of applause from the rest of the people who were there, but the people doing the interview weren't impressed at all, because I wasn't talking to the camera. I was playing to the audience and not the camera, so I was doing the wrong thing for the context. But I learned that. I've learned that now. The other thing was I was too expressive. I was acting, for heaven's sakes. But you don't need to be so expressive on a TV camera. The camera is very sensitive to you. It's constant. It's on your face. So your face shows a lot. You don't have to do much. So I'm gesticulating big to the audience. I'm playing to the audience. Doesn't work on TV. Not. So I get a 0 for effort.
Did you take part in some theater plays? Because you have this theatrical character, I believe. You're an extrovert. You like this, right? You like talking, you like singing, you like dancing.
Yes.
So
But I'm not an extrovert.
You're not an extrovert?
No.
Well,
I'm a shy guy.
Being a computer programmer, you would be. I would think you would be an introvert, but because you feel so easy on camera, and you sing in the presence of other people, so I would say that you are an extrovert. Maybe some kind of combination.
Yeah, but I'm really an introvert. But I don't care when I'm singing. I don't really care what people think. I just sing.
Okay.
And if you don't like it, well, tough shit. I don't care.
I remember 20 years ago we were playing chess at the Starbucks cafe. They had those outdoors tables, and they had the chessboard inside. We were playing chess, and there was this beautiful waitress. Her name was Phyllis.
I spotted her at class, at Mel's class.
That's right.
And I told you about her.
Yes, exactly.
And I told you where she worked.
Exactly.
And so you arranged to meet me there so that you could surreptitiously check Phyllis out.
That's right, exactly.
As a potential model.
It was the premeditated accident.
It was a premeditated accident, yeah. It was a accident on purpose accident.
And as we were playing, and you were distracted, I guess, and actually the first time you lost the chess. I won with you because you were distracted by Phyllis. Do you remember that?
Well, I can remember Phyllis being very distracting. I can say that much.
That's right. Do you still play chess or something else?
No. But I would be happy to follow Phyllis around.
I understand. She must be about 40 or 50 now.
Well, I hope she's still got black hair.
That's right.
And wears gothic clothes.
Oh yeah. So you actually remember that. Very good. Very good.
Well, she's imprinted in my mind.
Get it. And that's irreversible.
Yeah, she's forever young in my mind.
I would like to ask about your political orientation. As I remember, you were always telling me that you were a socialist. Can you
Yes.
Can you explain?
Well, yeah. Well, I used to think I was a socialist. I'm not so sure anymore, but I started out wanting to have a young liberal group in my hometown. And at that moment in time, among the people who I could get to come and speak to our group in the young liberal movement, there were a certain number of anarchists. There were people who were sympathetic to the Palestinians. Pardon me. In their struggle for independence, say in Israel, things are set up so that effectively Arabs don't have much, don't really have political power. I mean, they have some rights, but basically they're going to get outvoted all the time. So Israel's, for understandable reasons, is set up to make sure that there is no possibility of there ever being a majority of Arabs in the boundary of Israel, for reasons we can understand that. But that is why Israel will never agree to the return to the homeland rule that the Palestinians want to be able to come back to the land that they originally occupied. Well, that's never going to happen. That won't happen. So Israel can never agree to that. So I don't know how you get out of this. It seems like the two-state solution was a possibility. Now it doesn't. There is no one-state solution. That's so I'm kind of pessimistic about Israel. I thought Yasser Arafat was a reasonable guy. I don't think so anymore. I think he was determined not to do a deal with the Israelis properly. That he wasn't negotiating in true faith. And Yitzhak Rabin, his life was lost on something that was never going to happen. So I'm very sad about that. But yeah, leave that aside.
But how does this connect to socialism?
Right, yeah, I was realizing it didn't. So,
but you're saying that Israel is all against the Arabs and they have no chance. There is Palestine, there is Saudi Arabia, there is Egypt, there is Iran, there is Iraq. How come Israel, the small country in the middle, surrounded with all those Arab countries, still?
Those countries don't give a shit about the Palestinians. They don't care about them at all.
Okay.
They're not at all interested in the Palestinians having power. They are just against Israel for varied reasons. So that they're not prepared to. They can't really. They've tried to invade Israel a couple of times. Yeah, not going to happen. They can't. They don't have the ability to coordinate themselves enough.
Okay, as far as socialism, do you know that all the countries that they had socialism, they failed, I guess? Right now, maybe Cuba is trying to whistle itself out of it. There is Nicaragua. What else? There is North Korea. What other countries have socialism?
Well, I don't think that these countries have socialism.
What do they have?
Well, they have
Dictatorship.
they have a dictatorship of
Right.
sorts.
Right.
It's a one-person rule. It's certainly the case in North Korea.
Right. So what is a socialism according to you?
Well, socialism is really about equality in a broader sense than we mean it when we say equality in America.
Financial wise?
Yeah. So essentially, there would not be a large difference between what the CEO would earn and, say, an employee
Right.
at the bottom. So I can see that there's a reason why you would have a variety of pays. Right? It's the CEO has to know a lot about the corporation, but does he have to earn 200 million a year? I don't think so. I think you would be able to find people who would do the job for 5 million, maybe 1 million, who would be just as good as the ones that you have right now. The ones that you hear about right now are particularly greedy kind of people. They often don't really help the companies that they're guiding. They line their own pockets, and they get thrown out after 5 years, and they get these wonderful parachute clauses where they end up with $100 million. Meanwhile, they've led the company through shifting large amounts of jobs overseas, getting rid of people in America, and forcing the wages down for the workers that they do have, because there's less jobs around. So people are willing to take less money. But does this happen with the CEO? Does the CEO take less money? No, he doesn't. He takes more money. To me, that's wrong. And I want a society where that can't happen, where the government will be organized in such a way that that won't happen.
So in other ways, government will control the salary of the CEOs in the enterprises.
Yeah, I mean, the governments have a very good lever on this. It's called taxation. So if you get paid $100 million, I say, okay, great. We as the government are going to take 99 of those million off you. So you're going to get $1 million. And you're just going to have to be happy with that.
Right. Okay. So equality, I understand your way, but I just don't want to see that everybody will be pushed down to the lowest common denominator. That's what happened in my country. There were no rich people and poor people. Everybody was poor.
Right.
That's what
that's
socialism in Poland. You know.
Yeah, but that's no good. The way I envisage society that I would call socialist is, if you have a look at Star Trek, you have a look at the society portrayed there. There is quite clearly nobody wanting anything. You're hungry, you go to the replicator.
Got it.
you need some food, you need clothing. You go to the replicator. There's no money. People are different from each other, but there's no... they're not worried about where they are in a class kind of way. So they are individuals able to do the things that they're interested in. And that is the kind of society that I would like to see, that you are able to actualize yourself. Everybody has different ambitions, different talents, and you should be able to be free to explore what interests you, what grabs you. But you have a responsibility as a citizen to the welfare, to the greater good of society as a whole. And you don't escape that. So I'm not advocating anything where you are not conscious of having to have a role in society. So nobody's free to go off and do what they want, right? So you're not free to become Kaczynski, the guy who blows up people, right? That's not the guy. That isn't freedom. That's... So I want equality of opportunity, and I don't want such divergence of money. And I think we should, as a government, we can do that by taking away the money of the people who have a lot of money. And we can give the people who don't have a lot of money, we can give them some more money. So that everybody should be able to get a first-class education up to the age of 18, right? You leave high school, I believe you should we should invest more in high school. There should be more investment in the kindergarten to 18. And when people are 18, they should be coming out of school where they can do almost any job anyway. There shouldn't be this ridiculous nonsense of making people go to university when they don't really want to, and where there aren't really jobs that require people to go to university. It's like a fiction. It's a ridiculous fiction that to be, I don't know, to hold a mop in McDonald's, you've got to have a degree. This is nonsense. This is rubbish. You don't have to have a degree to work at a garage, right? You have to have some facility in being able to mend cars.
Right. Okay. Sounds good. The distribution. I have one more question. Basically, what is the most important to you? People chase after different goals: money, fame. What else? Love. What is the most important thing for you?
Well, it varies. I am a very lonely old man.
Why are you lonely and why are you old?
I am old because I'm 66.
And we agree that you're going to live for another 24 years, right?
Well, maybe, but if that's the case, then I'm going to run out of money during that time.
Well, you want to die prematurely with the money in your pocket?
No, when I die, I want to take it all with me. I don't want to leave anything to anybody.
Exactly, yes.
So I'm going to go on till the money's gone. Money's gone. But I've been depressed for the last 5 years, and for about a couple of months now, I've been coming out of it.
Why have you been depressed?
Well, because of getting laid off from my work, and I could not develop enough will to get another job.
Would you still be? Would you like to be working?
Well, I would like to be working, but I don't particularly want to work for somebody. So I've got an idea of what I'm going to do now. In a given day, I can generate 2 or 3 ideas for little software programs.
Okay, so this is
and I just keep them in here.
Private enterprise, you would make those...
Yeah, so I'm intending to write some programs in Java that will run on your desktop and also will run on here. So data will be effectively collected on this device, your phone, in a number of ways, right? You might be talking on the phone. Maybe you tell me what applications that you want to manage the data on.
Mm-hmm.
So my program would maybe go around, examine what data you've allowed to be recorded. So, well, take a simple example of the message function where you've got little text messages going on. Well, there's a lot of social activity on that. You know, people are messaging each other in classrooms. People are messaging each other while they're at dinner. People are on their computers all the time. Nobody's actually talking to anybody anymore. They're on with their boom boom. Now they're communicating with somebody, and it might even be the person on the other side of the table. We don't know.
You said you were an introvert, so this should be according to your. That's what you want, right? You don't want to talk to people. You want to text them or fax them or email them, whatever. You're trying to eliminate the human interaction as an introvert. That's my definition.
Yeah, well, I'm not trying to do anything.
Are you an introvert?
Yeah, I think so.
Why? What's the definition of an introvert?
Well, I'm uncomfortable sort of initiating conversations with people.
Right, and texting?
I don't really know, well, I don't like texting either. I don't really know how to interact with people.
Okay.
People are a bit of a mystery.
I thought that texting is helping you. It's kind of hiding you.
No, not really. I mean, it's still communication, so it's still, you know, you still got to figure out what you want to say in a text.
You told me to install WhatsApp, I believe, right?
WhatsApp, yeah.
WhatsApp, and you can see people through your WhatsApp, so wouldn't that be against your rules or character?
Wait, well, how can you see people? Oh, you mean on the video?
On the video. Live.
Yeah, I do that. I do video chats. I like that. I like to be able to see the other person, see my friend on the other end. Okay. And I get a picture of my friend, I get a picture of me, and it's nice. I like that.
I like that too. Yes, I do that too.
And
different application of something else. Okay, so what's the most important for you? You were saying money, love, fame.
Well, fame is not important at all. Money is kind of handy, but you know, if I run out of money, I don't know, I'll get depressed and I'll starve and I'll die.
But by then maybe they will have socialism, and maybe you can go to your replicator and get the things from it, and you won't need money.
Well, that would be nice. If we could come up with replicators in the next 10 years, I'm all for it.
They have this experiment somewhere. They doing the society that doesn't have to work or something. The government is providing for them.
Yeah. Yeah, well, you know, the government needs to think about it, because in the future there's going to be less jobs and more people.
Do you think technology is actually taking away jobs from people?
Well, it's hard to tell, because the actual jobs that people do changes as a response to well,
Tesla, the cars can drive themselves, and so the taxis are being obsolete in the future, perhaps.
Perhaps
the trucks. Uber is taking jobs away from regular yellow taxis, right? And Uber does not exist. It's a intellectual property. It's only an idea. They don't have any taxis. They just use people's cars.
Right.
Same thing with hotel, with Expedia, for instance. They don't have hotels. This is just an idea that you go on the internet and you research for the cheapest hotel or the deal.
All right.
So the internet is actually breaking the existing establishment.
Yeah. So that's kind of interesting, because that will result in a slightly different world, and maybe that will be more to my liking, the world that emerges from that. Because there does seem to be like with the hotels, you've got a lot of choices. So I think when people have more choices, that provides a bit more competition.
It's good from the consumer point of
view. Yeah, it's often good for the consumer, but not always. Doesn't always work out, but it's interesting to see.
Some of those consumers also drive the yellow taxi in New York, and they bitch about Uber,
Yeah.
Right. Okay, one more question, final question. You remember bringing my then 10-year-old kids to school with me, and sitting in the cafeteria, maybe between classes, you were singing to us.
Oh, yeah.
The famous song about worms.
Yeah, but I can only remember half of it.
Half of it.
I can only sing half of it.
Could you sing it? That's
so I'll try and sing it, and there's a piece of it I can't really remember. So I'm first going to talk about the bit that I can't remember. Okay. Which is that the song starts with "You're in the garden." So there's a guy in the garden, or a woman, I don't know, person in the garden, and they're going into the garden to well, they have this refrain. Nobody likes me, everybody hates me. Something, something into the garden, something, something. Then the word worms is mentioned. So the person's going into the garden to get worms, to eat the worms. Then the song describes eating worms. So this is the bit that I remember. Long, thin, slimy ones slip down easily. Short, fat, hairy ones don't. Nobody knows how much I enjoy a couple of worms a day.
That's it. That's beautiful. Thank you. My kids are singing until now. They remember you by this song.
They still sing it.
They're singing. All right. As a conclusion of this short conversation, I just want to say that this was a good time. I remember you as a friend, and it was actually great. And you were a good force in my life, and I thank you for that. And I thank you for this interview. It was great. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Tom. It's great to see you again, and I hope we will remain connected, because I see you as a friend as well.
Definitely, Roger. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Do you know what's worth fighting for? Well, it's not worth dying for. Does it take your breath away and you feel yourself suffocating?